Elias Thorne lay against the frozen earth, watching his own blood steam in the snow. The high valley was silent. The silence was wrong. There should have been the snap of his fire, the soft metallic click of his traps, the movement of his horses. But the fire was scattered, the traps were broken, the horses were gone. Only the wind moved, carrying the scent of pine and plunder. His lean-to was slashed canvas, flapping like a wounded wing. His plumes, the beaver pelts he had worked a season to gather, were ripped from their bindings and stolen. They had taken everything. His rifle was gone. His knife was buried somewhere in the churned, bloody snow. He tried to move his left arm. It did not respond. He felt the cold moving in, a deep numbness that was almost a comfort. He had seen this end for other men. He never thought it would be his. Silas Rook had come just after the sisters left. He had come with 5 men laughing. They hadn't come to trade. They hadn't come to warn him off. They had come to erase him. Rook, with his heavy coat and heavier greed, had watched as his men tore the camp apart. Elias had fought. He had fought as the high country had taught him, quietly, efficiently, and without malice. But he was one man, and they were 6. They had left him where he fell, assuming the cold or the wolves would finish the job. The valley was empty now. The tracks of their horses headed east, heavy with his work, heavy with their dishonor. Elias closed his eyes. The pain was fading. The wind was a whisper. He found himself thinking not of the attack, not of the injustice. He thought instead of the fire, the last fire he had built. He thought of the 2 small figures huddled in the snow, their faces masked by ice. He thought of the steam rising from the tin cups of broth. He thought of the quiet promise he had seen in the elder sister's eyes. He had shared his warmth. He had shared his food. He had given them his last spare robe. It was a simple act. It was the law of the mountains. You did not let the wild take what you could save. He did not know their names. He did not know their clan. He only knew they were freezing, and he had a fire. Now his own fire was going out. The snow was covering him. The peaks of the Tetons blurred against the greying sky. He had kept his word to the high country, but the high country was a hard master. The cold settled deep. He let go. The wind carries stories across these peaks. Some are lost to the canyons. Others settle in the pines, waiting for a fire to bring them to life. If you feel the chill of this high valley and the warmth of that last fire, add your own voice to the wind. Tell us in the comments where you are listening tonight and what part of this land you call home. 2 days earlier, the valley had been pristine. Elias Thorne moved like water through the willows. His work was a ritual. He waded into the icy streams, his hands sure and practiced. He set his traps not with greed, but with a quiet understanding. He took only what the river could spare. He left breeding pairs. He respected the borders. The Shoshone, the people of the high plains, hunted this valley. Elias knew their signs. He left their markers undisturbed. He was a ghost in their land, a ghost who traded fairly at the rendezvous and kept his camp clean. He was a man who understood that the mountains did not belong to him. He belonged, for a short time, to the mountains. This understanding was what set him apart. It was what kept him alive. The world at stake was not just his livelihood, it was this balance. Silas Rook and his brigade did not share this understanding. They were iron, where Elias was water. Rook's men moved like a scar across the land. They left deadfalls unchecked. They took animals they did not need. They poisoned streams and left fires burning. They saw the wilderness not as a home, but as a treasure chest to be broken open. They saw the Shoshone not as a people, but as an obstacle. Elias had crossed their path twice before. The first time, he had found one of Rook's traps set inside a sacred burial grove. Elias had sprung it and left it hanging from a branch, a quiet warning. The second time, he had stopped Rook's men from trading whiskey to a band of young Shoshone warriors. Rook had not forgotten. Elias knew Rook was in the territory. He had seen the signs, the careless waste, the blazed trees marking a path of conquest. Rook wanted this valley. He wanted the beaver, the elk, and the pass that led north. To take it, he needed to remove the man who lived in peace with the tribes. He needed to remove Elias. Elias knew this. He was not a warrior. He was a trapper. But he would not yield. He would not run. This valley was his compact with the wild. He would not break it. The sky turned a dark, bruised purple. The air grew still. The animals went quiet. A heavy snow began to fall. It was not a gentle snow. It was a whiteout, a storm that erased the world. Elias turned his horse toward the shelter of a known overhang, a shallow cave in the granite. He would wait out the storm. He needed a fire. The storm was a blind fury. The snow did not fall. It flew sideways, a wall of white that stole the breath. Elias reached his shelter, a granite cleft shielded by ancient pines. He settled his horse, whispering to the animal, sharing his own calm. He built a small, careful fire, just enough to fight the killing cold, not enough to draw unwanted eyes. He huddled deep in his robes, listening to the wind howl like a grieving mother. The world was reduced to the smell of wet wool, hot smoke, and freezing stone. It was in the teeth of this blizzard that he saw them, two figures stumbling through the white. They were small, moving without purpose, already ghosts. They fell, and one did not get up. Elias moved without thinking. He was at their side in moments. They were young, Shoshone girls. The elder sister, maybe 16 winters, was holding the younger who looked frozen, her eyes closed. They had no horses, no robes. They were wrapped in thin blankets, now sheets of ice. The elder girl, Yana, looked up at him. Her eyes were fierce, but her body was failing. She did not beg, she did not plead. She simply held her sister Opeka, waiting for the end. Elias lifted the younger girl. She weighed nothing. He carried her to the fire. He brought the elder. He sat them on his own bedroll, pushing them close to the flames. He wrapped them in his spare buffalo robe, the thickest one he had. He worked quickly. He broke the ice from their hair. He rubbed their hands and feet, feeling the slow, painful return of life. He melted snow in his kettle and added dried jerky and salt, making a hot, strong broth. He held the tin cup to the younger sister's lips. She drank. Color slowly returned to her face. He gave a cup to Yana. She watched him. Her eyes were dark, searching. She was looking for the man beneath the beard, beneath the heavy trapper's clothes. She was looking for his intent. She found no greed. She found no hunger. She found only the quiet resolve of a man doing what was right. They sat in silence for hours, the three of Detham. The storm raged outside. The small fire held the darkness at bay. At dawn, the storm broke. The world was white, clean, and deadly. The sisters were alive. Yana stood. She looked at Elias. "We are of the people of the snake," she said, her voice quiet. "My father is Black Hawk." Elias nodded. He knew the name. A chief of great honor. "You have saved his blood," Yana said. She looked at the buffalo robe he had given them, the broth they had eaten, the fire they had shared. This debt is ours. Elias simply packed the remainder of his jerky and gave it to them. The pass is 2 miles south, he said, pointing. It will shelter you from the wind. Your village is half a day's walk. Yana met his gaze. We will not forget this. They left, wrapped in his robe. Elias watched them go, 2 small figures against a vast white world. He turned back to his camp. He began to repack his traps. He never heard Silas Rook approach. The first shot took his horse. The next shattered his arm. The journey home was a waking nightmare. Yana held Opika, forcing her onward. The pass Elias had shown them was a gift. It cut the wind, but the snow was deep, and Opika was weak. Every step was a battle. Yana's mind was sharp, fueled by 2 things: the image of her sister's frozen face and the image of the trapper's quiet kindness. He had not asked for payment. He had not asked for their names. He had simply given. In her world, such an act was not a kindness. It was a bond. It was a debt that must be paid, or the spirit of the land itself would be shamed. She carried Opika on her back for the last mile, her own legs numb, her lungs burning. She fell at the edge of their winter village, screaming a single name, Father. Warriors found them. They were carried to the lodge of Black Hawk. The chief saw his daughters, wrapped in a trapper's robe, frostbitten but alive. He listened to Yana's story. He heard the name Thorn, a name he knew, a man who trapped the high valleys but never dishonored their sacred grounds. A man who kept his word. While the medicine man worked on Opika, Black Hawk gathered his council. The debt was clear. The trapper had saved the chief's blood. The honor of the clan was now tied to this man's fate. Black Hawk sent 2 of his best scouts, swift as shadows, to follow Yana's path back to the trapper's camp. They were to bring Elias Thorn back, to honor him. The scouts returned 2 days later. They moved not with the quick steps of a welcome party, but with the grim pace of messengers. They carried nothing. They stood before Black Hawk. Their report was short. The camp was destroyed. The trapper was gone. But he was not gone with his pelts. He was gone, dragged into the snow, left for the wolves. They found the tracks, 6 riders, heavy horses, and they found a single dropped flask, silver, with the initial R carved into it. Rook. The name was poison in the valley. The man who disrespected their lands, who stole from their traps, had now attacked the man who saved the chief's daughters. The council was silent. This was more than an attack. It was an insult to the balance. Rook had not just attacked a white man. He had attacked a man who was under the protection of a Shoshone debt. Black Hawk stood. His face was like carved granite. He did not speak of war. He did not speak of vengeance. He spoke of justice. He saved my blood, Black Hawk said, his voice low. He gave them his fire. We will answer. He gave the order. The warriors would ride, not to kill, but to reclaim. They would find Rook. They would reclaim the honor of the valley, and they would find Elias Thorn, dead or alive. At dawn the warriors gathered. Yana and Opika, now stronger, insisted on riding with them. They would show them the man. Silas Rook was careless. He was arrogant. He had pushed his men hard, east toward the rendezvous, eager to sell the stolen pelts. But the deep snow had tired his horses. He made camp in a wide, open bowl of a valley, believing himself safe, believing the lone trapper was already food for crows. He posted no guards. His men were loud, drinking whiskey, celebrating their easy victory. They did not notice the sky changing. They did not see the single eagle that circled, then circled again. They did not hear the silence that fell upon the ridges surrounding them. Rook woke to a different kind, stats of cold. It was not the air, it was the absolute stillness of the world. He stepped out of his tent. The sun was just touching the eastern peaks. On the ridge to the west, a single rider sat on a horse. The man was motionless, a silhouette against the pale light. Rook swore, calling for his men. As his brigade stumbled out, rifles in hand, another rider appeared on the ridge, and another and another. Rook's men looked around, their drunken confidence turning to ice. The ridges on all sides were lined. Warriors, Shoshone. They were not painted for war. They were not screaming. They were simply there. Hundreds of them, silent as the snow, bows strung, rifles resting steady. The valley, which had seemed so empty, was now full. Then the ranks parted. 3 riders descended the slope. Chief Blackhawk led. Beside him rode Yana and Opeka. They stopped 20 yards from Rook's fire. Rook stared, his mind finally connecting the pieces. He recognized the robe the younger sister wore. It was the one from Thorn's camp. Blackhawk looked at Rook, but he spoke to the valley. "This man," he said, pointing at Rook, "is a breaker of laws. He walks in shadow. He steals what is not his." Then he looked at Rook. "You did not just attack a trapper. You attacked the man who shared his fire with my daughters." Rook's men raised their rifles. Blackhawk did not flinch. "You are surrounded," the chief said, his voice calm. "You will not leave this valley with your weapons. You will not leave with your horses. You will not leave with the pelts you have stolen." Yana rode forward slightly. She looked at Rook with the same fierce eyes Elias had seen in the storm. "He gave us his fire," she whispered, but the words carried across the snow. "You left him to the cold." Rook saw the faces on the ridge. He saw the nocked arrows. He saw the cold, patient justice. This was not a fight he could win. It was a reckoning. "Leave the rifles," Rook ordered his men. "Leave the pelts. We walk." The warriors watched, silent, as the 6 men, shamed and disarmed, began the long, cold walk east, out of the high country, forever. After Rook's men had vanished over the pass, Blackhawk turned to his scouts. "Find him," he said. They moved back toward Elias's destroyed camp. It was Yana who saw it first, a faint depression in the snow, almost covered, a darkness that should not have been there. She ran, stumbling through the drifts. It was Elias. He was buried in new snow, his breathing so shallow it barely existed. He was alive, but the thread was thin. They worked with a focused tenderness. They wrapped him in the very robes Rook had abandoned. They built a travois and gently, carefully lifted him. The debt was not yet paid. They took him to their village. For weeks, Elias drifted in a world of fever and shadow. He was in the great lodge of Blackhawk. Opeka, the younger sister, rarely left his side. She fed him broth, just as he had fed her. The medicine man worked on his wounds, using poultices of willow bark and pine pitch. Yana sat, watching, her presence a silent promise. Elias woke one day to the smell of drying herbs and the sound of a drum. He saw Blackhawk sitting near the fire. The chief nodded. "You are back," Blackhawk said. Elias tried to speak. His throat was dry. "Why?" he managed. "You shared your fire," Blackhawk replied, as if it were the only answer needed. "My daughters live. The debt is paid." Elias looked at his pelts, stacked neatly in the corner of the lodge. Rook is gone," Blackhawk said. "He walks east. He will not return. His greed broke the balance. Your fire restored it." Elias slowly understood. He had not saved the sisters seeking a reward. He had saved them because it was the law of the mountain. The Shoshone had not saved him for vengeance. They had saved him to honor that same law. It was a language spoken not in words, but in actions, in shared warmth, in debts kept. Elias looked at his arm healing. He looked at the pelts. He owed these people his life. "The pelts," Elias said. "They are yours, a gift." Black Hawk smiled, a rare thing. "No," the chief said. "They are your work, your life, the honor of paying the debt. That was our gift." In that lodge, surrounded by the people whose land he had borrowed, Elias Thorne understood. He was not a lone trapper. He was part of the valley, and the valley had protected its own. Spring came. The ice on the rivers cracked. The high passes cleared. Elias was strong again. His arm was scarred, but it was whole. He had spent the winter in the Shoshone village, learning their language, sharing their stories, and teaching the children how to carve small wooden birds. He was no longer just Thorne, the trapper. He was man who shares fire. When the snows melted, he knew it was time to leave. He went to Black Hawk. "I must return to my valley," he said. The chief nodded. "It is your home. You will always be welcome here." Yana and Opeka came to him as he packed his horse, a strong pony gifted to him by the clan. Yana held out a rifle sheath. It was beautifully beaded, a pattern of blue mountains and a bright yellow fire. "So you remember the debt," she said. Opeka gave him a small pouch of herbs. "For the cold," she whispered. Elias mounted the horse. He looked at the village, at the people who had saved him. He had come to the mountains seeking solitude. He had found a family. He rode back to his valley. It was empty, clean, the way it was meant to be. He rebuilt his small cabin, sawing the logs with a quiet strength. He set his traps again, but something was different. He was not alone. He knew the wind carried the voices of his friends. He knew the eagles watched for him. He lived there for many more seasons, a man bound by an honor kept, a debt paid. The mountains teach a hard lesson. They teach that a man is not measured by what he takes, but by what he gives. He's not measured by the pelts he gathers, but by the warmth of his fire. Greed can steal a season's work, but it cannot steal a man's honor, and a single act of kindness, a cup of broth given in a storm, can fill a valley with allies at dawn. It is the highest law of the high country. If you enjoyed this story, stay a while longer by the fire. There are more tales from the high country, where honor rides the wind.